Brooke, and I'll be your conference operator. At this time, I would like to welcome everyone to the CA Lifecycle Management Global User Community Webcast. All lines have been placed on mute to prevent any background noise. After the speaker's remarks, there will be a question and answer session. If you'd like to ask a question during this time, so press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. If you'd like to withdraw your question, press the pound key. I would now like to turn today's conference over to your host, Mr. Cochran. Please go ahead, sir.
Good everyone, and thank you for joining the CA Lifecycle Global Community Webcast today. I'd like to make a few announcements. The CA Endeavor SCM maintenance for January 2013 through April 2013 has been published and is now available, and you can find the details on that going to the CA Endeavor SCM maintenance grid located on the CA Endeavor SCM homepage. Also, I'd like to announce that the CA Endeavor SCM version 15.0 update is discontinuing support for the Endeavor Software Manager 15.0 and all licensables product options beginning March 31st, 2014. Now back to today's topic on Harvest and DevOps. It's a natural fit. The presentation will cover how CA Harvest Premium Edition fits into DevOps picture and with other tools in the DevOps space. It will also cover 2013 roadmap for OpenMake Software Dynamic DevOps Suite, including the announcement of OpenMake Software's acquisition of Trinem. And Tracy Ragan is with us today, and she is the COO and co-founder of OpenMake, and she will be presenting today. And we thank her for her time and doing a presentation today. So Tracy, please go ahead when you are ready.
Hi, Tony. I also want to thank Mary and both Mary and Tony for inviting me today to speak. And I also want to make sure everybody remembers that CA World is only a short 11 days away, and there's quite a few good sessions, particularly the Endeavor community. The Endeavor team has been working very hard on putting together a good program for you this year. So I hope that those of you who are on this are also going to be seeing us in Las Vegas in less than two weeks. So today we're going to be specifically talking about this word event cycle called DevOps and what that really means. Many of you in the Endeavor community may realize that Endeavor is actually probably the first DevOps tool on the market. It actually stands for Endeavor. It stands for Environment for Development and Operations. So much of this information, if you're an Endeavor user, is sort of old information. It's something that you all have been doing for quite some time. On the side of the software developers and the distributed side, though, they're just now starting to dabble in this thing we call DevOps. Just a quick, Tony, can you see my slides okay? I just want to make sure that my slides are moving across.
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. So just a quick introduction of OpenMake Software. For those of you who do not know us, we have been a business partner with CA since 1995. I myself started as an Endeavor Workstation consultant and worked on both Endeavor Mainframe and Endeavor Workstation. We've been a trusted partner, a trusted advisor in the build and deploy management space for over 500 companies since back in 1995. Our product started being sold by CA back in 1997, and we have been providing services to CA customers since the time that I was out working on Endeavor Mainframe and the Endeavor Workstation environments. What we are is a company who really focus on solving problems in the build-to-release space. And that's why DevOps is a good fit for us. And DevOps really involves the movement of source code from the developer's hands to a production server. Now, there's a difference between what we would call application lifecycle management and DevOps is really where the pedal hits the metal, so to speak. It's the moving the requirement of these one-off script-driven processes to something that's more model-driven, that for Endeavor mainframe users would be called processors. We solve the problem of the developers working these very large monolithic environments to become more agile in the same way that Endeavor customers did that 30 years ago. We work tools that really align development and production more closely in order to ensure repeatability on the distributed side. So it looks and acts more like the mainframe. It's traceable, repeatable, and with a clear separation of duties. Some awards that we're very proud of. The Jolt Award is sort of a coveted award. We did win that in the change and configuration management space, and the Choice Awards for the Code project is specifically for .NET customers that have used our tools to streamline the compiling and deploying of .NET applications. About how on the distributed side, if you think about how things are built out, it's very different from the Endeavor environment that has built a full process engine across moving a COBOL module from development to production, and everything is really done for you. That didn't just happen overnight. It was an effort. Back in the 80s, when companies were moving over to Endeavor, there was quite a bit there was a lot of politics involved in it. There was a lot of work involved in it. But now most companies are managing their source code process on the mainframe in a very streamlined way, and a handoff is very easy. Not the distributed side. The distributed side still works in what I would call operational silos. They have a level of business technology management and IT portfolio management. Products there are things like Service Desk, where a ticket is opened, Clarity, where project time is being tracked, and CMDB, where items are being managed to try to identify dependencies and manage what I call the technology stack. At this level, you have development and you have testing. They try to work somewhat together. They design code, they use IDEs, they may use Harvest for doing check-ins and checkouts, tracking code and packages across the Harvest lifecycle. But on the back end, they're using scripted builds and scripted deploys that often execute on their own. They may not necessarily be handing that off to a production control team to manage a testing or production environment. Like CA Lisa, that is stepping in and taking some control of what happens when the product is attempting to be deployed and tested. But there's still quite a bit of reliance on what used to be called compile and ship JCL. Then at the management, the level, there's risk management that is looking at how to new is going out to production, and there's the actual deployments out to production. Fortunately, these operational silos have walls between them. There's not often ways to communicate between them, and this is why the DevOps challenge exists. It's because information is blocked between, say, production management can't go back up to somebody at the business technology level and say, hey, you're planning to release a particular binary. What impact will that have on my production environment? In the same way, testing may not be able to find out, even from the development teams, what functional points they need to re-execute in order to streamline this thing we call DevOps. Operational silos, the core problem for what DevOps is trying to achieve is that, number one, knowledge isn't shared across the organizational groups. How do we mind that? How do we make the knowledge more shared across those groups? Processes such as build and deploy. On the mainframe side, everything is model-driven. It's not so much on the development side. It's managed in these one-off coded scripts that sometimes are only good for one particular environment, maybe only test. So when you try to run those same things in production, there's a drift between what you see in development and what you see in production, not only from the deploy process side, but from how things are compiled, what technology stack is on the development side versus production. They tend to maintain control of the application lifecycle on the distributed side. And the reason why is because of the black box processes that actually support the core of the work that's being done. And when I talk those black box processes, I'm talking about the scripts that compile code, the scripts that move them out to test, the scripts that move them out to production. If you're a production control person and you're trying to deal with those black box scripts, you have all the responsibility for it to work, but no knowledge about what's in those scripts. So you go to the developers to be your trusted partner to do the majority of the work, and you become the person who approves it, gives them access, and watches them through the process. So production control has very little knowledge about a production release. And this is why dev, test, and production environments become out of sync so easily on the distributed side when you don't see that so much on the mainframe side. So there's a thing in this DevOps world that I call the ecosystem. There are products that fit into that ecosystem. Service Desk and Clarity and Harvest and Lisa and Client Automation all fit into that ecosystem. But in order to break down those silos, you have to start moving away from the one-off script-driven process and move towards a more model-driven process for both build and deploy. And that's where Meister fits in. Now, as Meister, it does the build component. It understands the impact of any change, sort of like automated configuration management or ACM on Endeavor. It can understand if you make a change to one copybook, how other components are impacted. Or in the C world, the Java world has very similar constructs. Meister understands those relationships and can report that up to individuals in business technology and IT portfolio management. So they say, hey, you know what, if we change this one small module, it's going to trickle down and impact several downstream applications. We may want to postpone it, or we may want to better manage how we're going to do this change. At the next level, the Meister does the trend reporting and the creation of binaries automatically. And I say that, I'm not talking about a job scheduler. I'm not talking about a CI server that simply connects job scripts together and makes it look automated. It actually goes out and does the compile itself. It does that on what we call build services. It looks very much like a processor. Trend reports are important because the development teams need to be able to understand how many times a build is breaking, how many times the deploy out to test is breaking, how many times did they fail their IMA test or their JUnit tests, so they can refine their process, have a feedback loop so that we're designing and coding, they can understand where they're failing. At the same size, on the same level, the testing team uses that same information to get an idea of the risk associated to the code that's coming across from the development teams. Meister can serve as a central point for both developers and testers to execute their own compile process, their own trend reports, and begin to see from the development and test side the risk associated to moving out a single component. That can be passed off to Lisa for deployment, or of course we have our own deployment module, and we have something that actually integrates very tightly with Harvest called Deployment Manager that allows you to do deployments directly out of Harvest. So if you're just managing and tracking source in Harvest, they can use Deployment Manager to do those deploys out to test and eventually production. So that takes us to that production level. The production level needs basic information about what's going into their production environment. They need a simple footprint, what we call an audit. The folks have called it footprints forever, and believe it or not, a footprint is a rare commodity in the distributed platform. You'll hear developers talk about bill of material reports. That's different from a footprint. A bill of material report shows you what was checked into the version control tool at the time the compile executed. It does not tell you what was used in the compile. we actually generate a full audit report that allows the folks at the production management side to actually say, look at that audit report and say it does match what our production technology stack looks like. This should go out unless it matches, and it's done automatically. So a validation step that Meister can pass off to our Deploy Plus step that says, hey, Deploy Plus, do not release this out because the last time you deployed it was on a different version of the Java runtime, for example. And client automation can also serve in that option for doing deployments, as well as the new tool that was recently purchased by CA called Nolio. So there's several options for doing those deployment, the actual releases. But the point here is that before you go to do that release and update those environments, it's important to know that the binaries that you're shipping matches those environments. And that is where that information is caught, exactly as you currently do it on the mainframe. We also have our tool, our Meister tool also comes with what we call our Mojo component. It does process automation, similar to a job scheduler or a workflow management tool. ITPAM can also serve in this role. So if you're an ITPAM customer, ITPAM can also connect these components together. Many times will ask me about different products and how they fit into this new DevOps marketplace. And it can be extremely confusing, even for someone who's been doing this since 1995. So I thought I'd just include in this presentation a list of some of the tools out there and give them a category to help you identify the kinds of tools that may be knocking on your door and understand where they fit into your unique ecosystem within your own organization. So first level, we have really what we would call source code management tools. Source ones that are popular are Git and Subversion. Host is I would call it more than a version control tool like Subversion or Git, because it does have a strong lifecycle management process allowing you to do promotions. And then, so I would call it a configuration management tool more than I would just a version control tool. And there's Microsoft TFS that we see quite often in the market for Microsoft users. Now we have what I would call project management tools. They are often also called ALM tools. There's tools like CollabNet TeamForge, C Agile Vision, Product Vision, PureVM has a tool called ALM, HP has a tool called ALM, eClarity and Urban Code's uRelease fits into this task and project management category. Those are useful for tracking a HID across the life cycle and associating it back down to what build that was in. At the level, we have products like Meister. Meister does tend to stay alone because we're unique in the sense that we provide a model-driven framework for both builds and deploys, removing the reliance on one-off script-driven processes. That is our sweet spot. That's what we do well. Both the process automation management with our Mojo component of Meister, we can create binaries and we standardize how to package binaries for deployment, as well as do some level of infrastructure management for delivering environment configurations at the same time as the deployment. Things called R repositories, and that's a very confusing topic. An RAC repository is similar to Endeavor Libs. If you're an Endeavor user, if you're an OpenMake Software user, you might call it a dependency directory. But when you build an application, when you're compiling the code, regardless if you're doing it on the mainframe or if you're doing it in the Java space, you have third-party components that you need to bring down to link in to your application. In the Java world, they call it jarring it or warm it. So you know what all those third-party components are. Sometimes you'll hear them called transient dependencies because they change. So there are some artifact repositories on the market, some open source ones. And what they do is they say if you're using this version of this widget that you downloaded from the open source world, you also need these components. As a sort of a SCM purist, I don't like the idea of downloading external libraries from the open source world. You can set Meister as your Harvest together as your artifact repository, or you can go ahead and externalize that control and head off to either an open source solution, or you can actually purchase these and make them your own private repositories. That's really when you hear about an artifact repository, and if you have developers saying they need support for that, it's all about knowing what dependencies are needed, which Meister can figure out, and where to pull them from. And you can figure out to pull them from the open source repository, from inside of Harvest, or any other version control tool your developers may be using. And then very popular scripting languages like Ant, Nant, and Maven. Gradle and Make also fit into that. These are literally the scripting languages that help you create your binaries. They are compiled JCL. It is what we work very hard to replace. Now, Maven is a product that tries to make Ant easier to use. And Ant is difficult to use because it's a scripting language, and it's hard to script all the dependencies. There's always challenges when you try to manually put together a compile and link script that's going to handle every situation when it's static. If it's not dynamically derived, it makes it difficult to manage. So you have somebody tweaking and maintaining these scripts. Jenkins and Hudson, or TeamCity or uBuild, are tools that are very job scheduling like. I think there's a couple else out there. There's Automation Anywhere. There's products like I can't come to mind, but they're job schedulers, and they have been written around build and deploy scripts. Download them from the internet. You can set them up fairly easy, but they're not enterprise. I would consider them enterprise scale tools. They're not necessarily tools that you're going to use on the production management side. A developer might use it to set up his own continuous integration process, where he goes and he compiles his code with using his script. He runs static code analysis, and then deploys out to a test server to see if his changes have been made. Very useful tools for that kind of a setting. In the deployment world, there's new kinds of tools that are coming onto the market that fit into this DevOps space. And what I would call them application release automation tools. All of them are somewhat different and cater to the different needs of deployments. Code, Chef, and Puppet Labs are two primary open source tools that have apps that you can do to purchase them. A CA automation suite for clouds and for data centers, so that you can go out and manage your infrastructure automatically using these tools. They allow you to manage your server environments, whether it be a WebSphere environment or a Logic or an Oracle environment. And then there are tools specifically that just will do one type of environment. For example, Rational Application Framework may do a really good job with WebSphere, but not do so well with deploying Oracle tables because it's specific to WebSphere. At this level, you have tools that are both process automation tools as well as application release automation tools, such as our Deploy Plus as a product called UC4, C Automation Suite for data centers, and Trinem's Deployment Manager. So it gives you the landscape of the kinds of functionality and tools that you will find in the marketplace, but the end result is intended to help streamline taking a change from a developer and get through the life cycle all the way down to the underlying engines that compile and deploy, so that everybody knows what is actually occurring on the back end. It's like popping up the hood and seeing what's going on in there, as opposed to having faith that your car is going to take you to the local grocery store without having any issues. We know that doesn't always happen. And one of the core reasons is because there is so much black box processing on the distributed side. So make software offer in terms of what we call our dynamic DevOps suite. On one side we have the Graces, which really shows the Ant and the Maven and the one-off deploy scripts. Joe Tool can support that. PAM can also support that. On the side, I show you our master in our Deploy Plus tools, which shows you that we're taking control of the actual collation of the binaries, the creation of the audit reports and the footprints, and passing that off to Deploy Plus for moving it out to your servers with a pre-validation step ahead of it. So one thing on these one-off scripts, and the other side is giving you full automation from build through deploy. And it's that full automation that's really going to take you to a lower risk deployment. So the benefits is that, first of all, it creates that model-driven framework that the mainframe has enjoyed for literally the last 30 years. And any mainframe, any framer will tell you that it is the one thing that has eliminated these very error-prone steps and bottlenecks that the compiled JCL and the shipped JCL caused some years ago. It gives a single portal for everybody from dev through test and production, and to meet the needs of the CI developers, your agile developers, as well as production security and production control. So again, we're providing a single tool that can be shared between the developers who are demanding ad practices, as well as production control who says, hey, we need something a little more waterfall. Every time you do a compile doesn't mean you need to do a production release. Secondly, we're minimizing risk by providing smaller builds and releases through incremental processing, which is not always possible in the scripted world. And eliminating those operational silos so that somebody on who's gathering requirements for an application can look to see what changes the impact the changes will have on the downstream or on the production release. So how to release to the current OpenMake Meister users our 7.5 release that will be announced at CA World in the next 11 days. The team is very busy right now finishing up with some beta customers and getting the final bows and ribbons around it. It will include, but believe it or not, our final Eclipse RCP release. We will be moving away from that. It has enhancements for deployments to WebLogic and WebSphere, and it will include some early components of Trinem's Deployment Manager and will options for customers who are interested in purchasing our Trilogy product and Project Director and RTI, which I'll explain in a moment. Beta will be a re-architected version of Meister. It's been a request from our customers to put an Oracle back-end on our Meister product. We will be doing that mainly to support a more robust deployment option. And we're going to introduce something called a domain model, that if you were operating this in the cloud, and let's say you were a large organization who had several subcomponents, you could have a high-level domain with lower-level domains. And eventually, we'll be hosting this in a cloud and supporting companies who want to do their builds in a cloud. One, we will have completely integrated into our Deploy Plus component our Trinem Deployment Manager, including its endless deployment using what they call Remote Transfer Interface, or RTI. So 7.5 has got enhancement to deployment service, did offer Z-Linux support, and we'll have options for the Harvest customers with the Trinem suite. More details for 7.5, we're going to have deployment services enhanced for WebSphere and WebLogic. We've included more package management and incremental processing for deployments, the deployment validation, the ability to quickly change ownership on a server side, and then the Trinem components. Do not know who Trinem Consulting is. They're a group of deployment experts out of the UK. We've known them for quite some time and have always had some affinity in terms of our beliefs and how things should be operated between development and production control, and felt it was a practical time for us to join forces to bring their deployment expertise on top of our build expertise. The tools for Harvest customers currently that can currently purchase our remote transport interface, which is literally a agentless way to do deployments. It also allows you to manage Harvest checking out on operating systems that Harvest may not support, such as iSeries, OpenVMS, Stratus, and Tandem. So you can move files and check in and check out from those into a supported Windows or Unix Harvest server. Deploy Manager is very tightly integrated with Harvest Workbench and the Eclipse plugin. If you use Deployment Manager with Harvest, you are actually seeing everything that you're doing inside the Harvest environment, and it allows you to manage your environments, your applications, your servers, and your users for doing those deployments. It does it with RTI, so it allows you to set up a deployment process that does not require the heavy footprint of remote agents. Is a very interesting little tool that can be used to bridge things like Service Desk and Harvest. We call it a rapid systems integrator because it allows you to quickly put up front-end dialog boxes that can connect to different applications. So they can pass across between a Service Desk and Harvest a change request or a requirements ID. Project Director, for those of you who have very large Harvest environments, is excellent for exporting and importing entire Harvest projects. It's great for disaster recovery and localizing disaster recovery. Trinem has been a preferred supplier for services of CA in Europe. They have quite a strong customer list, and they will be at CA World if any of you want to come and talk to them about any of their additional options for Harvest that will actually leverage Harvest and bring up to a more Endeavor-looking experience. I'm going to quickly, because we're getting late on time, I'm going to quickly go through some of these screens. This one I'm going to cover, though, it shows the Trilogy, the current Trinem product line, interfaces into Harvest for what would be called continuous deployments. So on the backside, Miner would be doing your continuous builds, and on the deployment side, you could have Trilogy putting out your continuous deployments. So Trilogy pass off the information over to Harvest, used to be called CASCM, but I believe we're calling it Harvest now. And RTI would be running out on those servers or would be connecting to those servers, and Deployment Manager would be managing your environment. So you can, at this point, upgrade Harvest to include these components so that Harvest can actually do your deployment. So we're introducing a full web interface. You will not see any administrative features in the Eclipse RCP for those of you who are currently using our Meister product, or what would be called CASCM Premium Edition. It will have Oracle database, and it will have the introduction of those domain models. We'll focus on integrating from our Employee Plus tool, integrated agentless features of Trinem's products, the RT, and the support of the iSeries OpenVMS operating systems. Today, we see you have more complete ecosystem. If you're using the CASCM Premium Edition, you have what is currently now in the green boxes. You have the ability to serve up to your business technology management and IT portfolio management change and impact analysis reports, so they can see what their changes are doing to downstream applications. We can create binaries automatically and toss away the scripted builds that may be causing you some grief. and do the trend reporting that the developers are asking for, including doing continuous integration. Also have the ability to audit and validate your binaries. Right now, if you're using CA SCM Premium Edition, those green boxes are filled in for you. To that we sell directly would be our Trinem Deployment Manager, which will soon become the Plus, and integration into products such as Servation for our Cloud Builder component, which allows you to automatically spin up and provision different environments for your developers and testers. So before they send it off to testing, they can say, hey, give me a testing environment that is exactly like the testing environment is going to be sent to. Let me test it, and then I can send it off to the testing team so that they can do what they need to with products like CA Lisa. On the same side, Cloud Builder can allow a developer to do an emergency fix, spin up a production version, test it there before they send it off to production control to be released into the production environment. Some of you who currently own the premium edition of Harvest already have these features to build out the Harvest environment to be more supportive of the DevOps challenge. And there's additional features that can be purchased for using Harvest and your standard environment for doing deployments. Mojo product, but it does allow you to manage any of the deploy scripts written in any language that your developers may just want to hang on to. So as you move this process out the door and you implement it, you can do a kind of half-baked, where some teams have rolled over to a model-driven process that looks more like Endeavor, and other teams can hang on to their build scripts and their deploy scripts. A bit of information that is lost. For example, if you're using a build or deploy script that is a black box, we can't tell you what the impact's going to be on the environment if you make that change. We can execute it, and we can keep the logs in a central location so everybody can see it. So there's some functionality that's added, but the information is still hidden. That's why people to use monitors to really eliminate that black box process, as well as accelerating some of these processes. We've seen build script run for 6-7 hours, and if you've got an emergency release you need to do on the mainframe, that sounds crazy that you can't just go do something incremental, but you have a 6 or 7 hour window before you can get the entire application recompiled and resend the entire application out to production. So speed is of the essence, and developers often ask that question, how can we speed things up? Again, Builder is integrated with CA's server automation product, and allows you to spin up these different images, so developers can get don't have to have 3 physical machines sitting on their desk, one for development, one for test, and one for production. They can do that through the cloud. Deploy is standardizing and automating the application release process across between what development might need to do, or what testing does, or what production control does. And really what we're working towards is an easy way to move code out of the hands of developers into production control in a risk environment. High-risk deployments are very, very, very bad. Then there's an argument between developers that are trying to do agile processing and DevOps, and production control and upper management. It's important to keep in mind that what developers are doing is they're trying to do things in smaller increments. They're trying to do incremental processing, oftentimes without the ability to do an incremental build or an incremental deploy. So they do small changes. They wanted to have shorter release cycles. So they may want to do a release every other day. Now, management or production control might see frequent releases as a high risk, while developers see it as a low risk, because what they're saying is, we're going to make few changes. Fewer changes is a good thing. Fewer changes in smaller bites at a time. And that's why you hear things like continuous build and continuous deploy. But outside of the coin, production control hasn't seen the successes because these break all the time. So developers are trying to do their best to make things less risky. Their back-end processes are still back in the 20th century and may not work as well as they need to for supporting continuous build and deploy, which is why DevOps, again, is a very important topic. operating systems that we support and environments that we support for deploying out to. On the left-hand side are some of the environments that we actually can standardize deployments to. On the right-hand side are the operating systems that we support, and if you take a look here, we have Z-Linux support, and the latest release of Harvest, which I believe is going to be announced at CA World as well, will support Z-Linux. So if anybody is a Z-Linux customer, we have answers for you. And consulting services, I would be remiss not to remind everybody that we do consulting for CA, or you can come to us directly. Either way, we're happy. CA has used us for quite some time, so if you have previous contracts with CA, you can reach out to them to bring us in to help you sort out the DevOps process around the existing CA products that you have installed or may be looking at to install. And again, world, not too far away, just 11 more days, I believe it is. I'll be doing a similar presentation at CA World on Tuesday, the 23rd, 11:15 to 12:15. And Rose would probably have loved to have me add comments on this, but I did print out earlier today, I believe that there is a mainframe networking lunch on Monday from 12:15 to 1:15. Which I would think that most of you would want to be sure and go to if you are indeed going to be at CA World. And directly after that, at 2:30 on Monday, there's going to be a panel discussion with different customers called "The Good, the Bad, and the Not, and the Me So Ugly," or something of that sort. That's going to cover some of the best practices that's been seen in this particular space. On that note, I will leave it for questions.
Please press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. We'll pause for just a moment to compile the Q&A roster. Again, to ask a question, please press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. Moment.
Well, it looks like there's no questions over the audio. We also have a Q&A area on the right side of the WebEx, so you can ask questions there. And if we have no questions, we can wrap it up.
Question.
No questions. I'd like to thank Tracy for the most excellent presentation today and taking time out to do that for us. And our next global, I don't know the exact date of it, will be based on Endeavor instead of Distributor side. And if that's all for today. And like Tracy said, CA World will be coming up in about 11 days. And thank y'all all for attending today.
Thank you. Concludes the conference. You may now disconnect.